Good morning, everyone. And I'm Joanne Gabriel, and welcome to Microgreens, a nutritional powerhouse with our guest instructor, Lindsey Cohen from Essential Earth Farm. We're going to learn a lot about microgreens this morning, their nutritional value, how to use them with cooking, and how to grow them. We're also going to learn a little bit about urban farming, an up-and-coming trend that makes use of limited space in a city to grow fruits and vegetables. Before we begin, I would like to mention that programs at Darien Library are made possible by the annual Friends of the Library campaign. We thank you for your support to make programs like this possible and our collections available to the community. Our presenter this morning is co-owner and founder of Essential Earth Farm, a small women-owned urban farm located in the heart of Stamford, Connecticut. The farm focuses on growing nutritionally dense foods such as microgreens and mushrooms in an indoor controlled environment. As the former director of sustainability for the Greenberg Nature Center in Scarsdale, New York, she knows a thing or two about recycling and locally and sustainably grown produce. A tried and true educator, please welcome Lindsey Cohen.
Thank you, Joanne. Hello, everybody, and good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I am really just going to get right into it. I'm going to first start with a PowerPoint presentation, and then we are also going to do a how-to with your grow kits that hopefully you were able to pick up at the library. And again, as Joanne said, if you have any questions, please just feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we'll make sure that we can get to them as we go. Okay, so as Joanne said, I am the co-owner and co-founder of Essential Earth Farm. We are an urban farm in Stamford, and we currently grow microgreens and mushrooms, and we also have a composting operation. So Casey, my partner, and I, we both founded this business after being educators for about 6 and 10 years at the Greenberg Nature Center, and we were doing things like garden education, food systems education, and we saw this disconnect between people and an understanding of where their food came from, how nutritionally valuable it is, and what does our food system even look like. And so we decided we wanted to create this hyper-local model where we can bring circularity back into our food system, meaning that we're accounting for the growing of food, the harvesting of food, the consumption of food, but we're also accounting for the end of life for food. So we're thinking about what is happening when our food has been eaten or has not been eaten. Maybe it's gone bad, but that's something that we're trying to do. So we're trying to create this model that we can teach people with. So here we are teaching you about a small piece of our model, which is our microgreens. But essentially, we grow mushrooms and microgreens here. We then take the waste product from our operations and we compost it. It turns back into soil, and then we're able to use that soil to grow our microgreens and our mushrooms once again. So we also take compost from a lot of our restaurants. So in the bottom left, you can see one of our chefs happily composting the food waste from his restaurant. You can also see the top left is our current farm operation. I'll have a bigger picture of that later, but we are in a commercial building that used to be a music studio. So we're playing a little bit into adaptive reuse here, where we're taking the built environment that we are given and we are finding ways to creatively grow food in it, especially in an area like Stamford. We know that there are a lot of people who don't have access to the food that they need. So we're hoping that this can be one solution to that problem. So our agenda for today, we're just going to start with the basics of what are microgreens, what is the nutritional value of microgreens, and then we're kind of going to jump into how are we going to grow your microgreens in your home. And we will also talk about our favorite ways to consume microgreens, and we'll leave some time for a Q&A at the end as well. So the first question is, what are microgreens? And so very simply, microgreens are just the baby vegetable or herb crop. So it's the exact same crop. So what you're looking at on the screen right here is actually a pea crop. This is the microgreen version of it. The seed is exactly the same. So we're not changing the seed, we're not changing the soil. The only thing that we're changing is how densely we plant the crop, forcing it to stay small, which you'll see in a little bit later slide. And we're changing the amount of time that we're allowing the crop to grow. So with microgreens, you're going to harvest that crop in 7 to 20 days. And actually all of the varieties that we've given you are in 8 to 12 day harvest. So within 2 weeks, you're going to have microgreens that you are going to get to eat in your food in your home. So most microgreens, to be considered micro, they're going to grow about 2 to 3 inches in height. But the important piece here of why we care about microgreens is that they're going to have 5 to 40 times the nutritional value per serving of their adult counterpart. So if I eat 1 pea microgreen, that individual pea microgreen has all of the nutritional power from the seed to grow into an entire pea crop that would yield me tons and tons of peas, right? So what we're seeing is this concentration of nutrients, which I'll explain a little bit in a later slide as well. But along with the concentration of nutrients, you're also getting a concentration of flavor. So you have to imagine that every single seed has the power and the flavor to grow into a full crop. So all of that is now concentrated into one little leaf. And that is what we're consuming. So when you eat a microgreen crop, you're also going to see that you're going to have a lot more of a bold, intense flavor. It usually mimics the flavor of whatever you're eating, whether it's a radish, a pea, a sunflower, right? So it would mimic the flavor that you would get in those crops as an adult, but it would be a lot stronger, a lot more bold. The other thing that kind of tells us that we're looking at a microgreen versus another crop is what's called the cotyledon versus a true leaf. So a cotyledon is the baby leaf of a crop. So I pulled up cilantro because this is a really easy way for me to show you. But on the right side here, you see this little cilantro leaf. We always find them very cute. It looks like they're holding their seed. So cilantro is one of our herb crops that we grow as a micro. And our chefs happen to like it with the true leaf. So it's the only crop that we let grow the true leaf. But what you can see here is, I'm hoping you can see my mouse, is that the top leaf here that I'm circling, that is the true leaf. That is the leaf that is typical of the cilantro plant as an adult. That is what it's going to grow to and what we are going to consume when it's an adult crop. The cotyledon is the baby leaf. So typically when you're eating a crop as an adult crop, you're losing that cotyledon. You're not really consuming the cotyledon. But as a microgreen crop, that is the only thing that you're eating. So for most of our microgreen crops, we're not allowing this true leaf to come in that you see on the cilantro. We're just eating these 2 little baby leaves. Sometimes when you are growing your microgreens, you can really let them go longer. If you don't have time to eat them, you're too full, you haven't eaten at home for that week. The flavor, the bigger they get, the flavor will become less intense and you'll start to get that true leaf. As soon as the true leaf comes in, flavor and nutritional value is going to disperse throughout the crop. And so you have to eat more of it to get the nutritional value and the flavor. All right. So this is just a way that I like to show this so that you have a little bit better of an understanding. So on the left here, we have a broccoli microgreen crop. Each one of these tiny leaves is going to grow into a full head of broccoli, right? So we are harvesting it well before it reaches maturity. So it has the seed itself, and then the baby plant has all of the nutritional power to grow into a full head of broccoli. So broccoli is a fun one and exciting one because if you do look up broccoli microgreens, what you'll find is that this one has 40 times the nutritional value than if you were to eat the full head of broccoli per serving, right? So if I eat 1 serving of broccoli microgreens, I get 40 times the nutritional value than if I was to eat a serving of adult broccoli. You also see sunflower here. So again, when you eat a sunflower microgreen, each one of these tiny stems, and you'll have hundreds of them on your tray, has the nutritional power to grow into a full sunflower, right? So we're thinking that, so this is just our way of showing you how concentrated the nutrients are. Same thing with our pea crop here. So we have a pea microgreen. It does start to get its little tendrils, but this single leaf would have the ability to grow into a full pea plant that would then give you peas, right? So this is a way that we can say that every single small leaf that you are consuming has all of the nutrients right inside of it because it is so close to seed and so close to soil. So a good way of also thinking about it is the closer your crop is to seed, So, and the closer your crop is to soil, the more nutritional value that it will have. And again, if you just imagine, you know, this one leaf is going to turn into broccoli. The bigger that it gets, it does continue to pull some nutrients from the soil, but it's not all of the nutrients that are within that seed. So it's just like a baby person in the embryo, right? All of the nutritional value that is inside of the mother is what will allow that baby to grow for a lot of its life, right? You're still adding sustenance, you're adding food, but what's in the seed is essentially that. That is what will allow this seed to grow and prosper for the entirety of its life. And now we're concentrating into one little leaf. Okay, so with your starter kits, you've gotten 3 seed varieties. We've given you these because these are kind of our tried and true. They're very easy starter crop. You don't need to have a green thumb to grow microgreens. I was just telling Joanne that I did not have a green thumb when I started this business. This is something that I truly believe anybody can do and figure out. So the ones that we've given you are the ones that we feel like you're going to have the most success with. And they are also some of our favorites. So cabbage is actually my favorite. But so this here is a cabbage microgreen crop. So again, you're seeing hundreds of little baby leaves because we've planted hundreds of seeds. The cabbage that we've given you is a purple cabbage variety, so it also has a really beautiful color to it. The bottom half that you're seeing right here is the soil. So we're planting in less than an inch of soil. You're seeing some of the roots start to come down, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But essentially, this is what you're eating. So when you harvest a microgreen crop, you're going to cut it right across from the top, and you're just going to eat these little baby guys at the top. And again, this is where you're seeing that cotyledon. You're not seeing a true leaf. You're seeing 2 small baby leaves. So cabbage is a 6 to 14 days to harvest. Again, this just depends on what kind of flavor texture you like. So you can play around with that. It is in the brassica family, so similar to broccoli, and it's going to give you a very strong broccoli and cabbage flavor. The nutrient value of all of these crops you're going to see does vary. And that's really important because it shows you that you can really use microgreens as a way to boost your diet and the nutrition that you get in your meals. So cabbage contains vitamin C, vitamin A, and vitamin E, as well as beta carotenes, potassium, and iron. But the thing that cabbage is most known for, and also broccoli, is something called sulforaphane. Now, this is a chemical that's actually released when the broccoli or the cabbage is smushed. So it actually, the crop has to be harmed for you to get the benefits of this. And it's also better raw. So when you cook it, you lose some of the sulforaphane. So microgreens are typically eaten raw. Even when you put them on a hot dish, they're always an addition at the end. So that is the best way for you to get the value of sulforaphane in your food. But what it is, it's a sulfur-rich compound that has many anti-cancer properties. It supports heart health, and it could have anti-diabetic effects. So if you look this up, you will see that this is the reason that broccoli is kind of all the rave, but cabbage also has a sulforaphane. So that's why it's become a very popular crop, specifically just for that. The other crop that we've given you is Daikon Radish. So the radish crops as microgreens and just in general have a more wide array of nutrients. So when you eat the radish crop, it's become very popular with individuals who buy from us because you're getting a very wide array of nutrients in this crop. This is a 6 to 10 day harvest, so it's also a shorter period. You're going to have an intense radish flavor, and the radishes are typically a little bit spicy. So if you're not a fan of spice, just be aware that the radish crops are going to be a little bit spicy, especially because it's going to be a bold radish flavor, super concentrated. This contains vitamin A, B, C, and E, and K, folic acid, niacin, potassium and iron, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, and zinc. And based on studies, we see that this Daikon radish crop may have anti-inflammatory properties based also on what's the vitamins that we see inside of it. And it could act as a diuretic to help clean and detoxify your body. Now, what you can also see here is a better view of what are the cotyledon leaves, just these 2 leaves, and you do see a couple seeds on here. So these are the seed holes. Certain crops, it is okay to consume the seeds. So we eat these just like this. It's not going to be hard or crunchy. It's very soft at that point. There are some crops where you're going to want to pull the seed off. It's just not, and you'll know it as soon as you eat it that you probably didn't want to eat it. But basically, if you see the seed on here, that's totally okay. The third crop that we've given you is our spicy salad mix, and we've given you this because it is an all-around favorite of individual consumers. It is an 8 to 12 day harvest time, and it is a mix that already includes in it broccoli, kale, kohlrabi, arugula, red cabbage, and mustard. So you're getting nutritional value of all of these mixed together. So already what I told you about the broccoli and the cabbage, you're getting in here, as well as kale, which is also a super concentrated nutrient value. And we already all know that kale is a very nutritious food on its own as an adult crop. So this contains vitamins C and D, as well as antioxidants, calcium, iron and potassium, and zinc. And again, a really great picture just showing you how tiny these leaves are that we're harvesting. This crop here is ready to eat and harvest. So these are just the baby cotyledon leaves. So I also wanted to just clear up microgreens versus sprouts, because this is something that I find comes up a lot when we talk to people. They say, oh, well, I've had sprouts, and it's in the same family. It's very similar, but there are a few differences that I just wanted to chat with you about. You can absolutely grow sprouts in your home. It's very straightforward. Again, the same seeds that you would use with microgreens, which is great. But the differences here are, number one, the grow time. So with microgreens, you're looking at that 6 or 7 to 20 days. The 20 days for micros is typically your herb crops. So like we grow basil and cilantro here, those are 20-day crops. All the crops that you have are in the 7 to 12 range. Sprouts are going to be shorter time. So you're actually eating sprouts well before they've hit the microgreen stage. So it's only a 3 to 5 day grow time. And the pictures I have on the right are sprouts, and the one on the bottom right is what you would see in a store. Oftentimes you'll see it in the salad section, and sometimes they have a little moisture to them, and that is because of also how they've been grown. Sprouts are always grown hydroponically. So what that means is there is no soil involved in growing sprouts. You're just using water. In the top right picture, you can see a mason jar in the back. That's how most people choose to grow sprouts. They'll put seeds into a jar, they'll add some water overnight, and then for the next 3 days, you actually just rinse and drain the seeds and you grow sprouts. You're also not really exposing them to light, which is why they have this lighter color. There's a little green in the alfalfa, but most of them have this yellow color. So they have not gone through photosynthesis. So sprouts are also an easy one to grow at home because of that reason. You don't have to worry about light, and you just have a 3 to 5 day grow time. And all you're really doing is rinsing and dumping water. Now, the sprouts are eaten entirely. So when you're growing the sprouts, you're consuming seed and sprout. With the microgreens, we're going to harvest those. We're going to cut them at the base, and we're just going to eat the top half. And that's really because they've been grown in soil, and you don't really want to be eating down there. The other piece here is that sprouts are a little bit less nutritious. And the reason for that is that they don't have access to soil, and they don't have access to photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is a very important process for a plant in converting certain nutrients so that our body can absorb them better. So while sprouts are extremely nutritious, you will get a little bit higher nutritional value with your microgreens. And that's also because as they start to grow, they are using the nutrition that is in the seed, but they're also starting to pull nutritional value from the soil. So having them grown in soil is also going to increase nutritional value for our microgreens as compared to a sprout. Again, both are amazing to eat. You might hear, I had a friend who was pregnant and she told me she couldn't eat our microgreens. You'll hear that sprouts can have some risk involved just because you are creating a breeding ground for bacteria. So, you know, you can usually tell though, you'll start to grow mold, it'll smell a little funky, then you shouldn't eat it. So the sprouts have a more of a margin for error where it's not as clean of an operation. The microgreens are typically not like that. If you have an issue with microgreens, your entire tray is going to deflate and you're going to see mold growing on the surface. You've given the bacteria that could harm you enough time to emerge and show itself. With the sprouts, you're eating within 3 days. Sometimes you don't realize that something isn't going right in that. So that's where there could be risk with sprouts. And that could be something that you could encounter or that you could see if you did some research. All right, so a little bit about how we grow. Again, we are an urban farm. So we have a 6-room commercial space. Each of our rooms is outfitted specifically for what we're growing, but it's still a very easy process to grow at home. We're growing on a large scale here. So you can see that we have a large open room with these metal racks. Each of the racks is outfitted with some lights. They're typical T5 lights that we just hang. And that is a light source for all of our crops. We are growing anywhere from 100 to 200 trays a week here. You guys have a 10-10 tray that we gave you. So what you see in these images is a 10-20 tray. It's just the typical grow tray for larger scale. So it's about double the size. So if you find that you really enjoy growing microgreens, you might want to upgrade to a 10-20 tray. And what I'm showing you on the bottom right picture here is what you'll be doing as well, is that we hand grow and hand water all of our crop here. And we do feel like it is actually an important step in our process to increasing shelf life and just the quality of the crop. But each day, all of your greens are sitting in 2 trays. They're sitting in a tray at the top that has holes, and they're sitting in a tray at the bottom that has no holes. The way that you water microgreens is through the bottom tray. So you're never going to be spraying on the top of your microgreens once they've been exposed to light, because that could open them up to getting some mold as the water sits on the top. So you're always watering from the bottom, and the roots will actually start to come through the holes of that top tray they're planting in, and they're just going to suck up all the moisture from that tray. It also makes it a lot cleaner of a process where you're not spraying water all over your kitchen counter or wherever you might have your trays. You're just dumping a cup of water right into the bottom tray. And I'd like to show this image because it kind of just shows a couple things. The first thing it shows on the far left is how densely we are planting our seeds. And as I talked about earlier, when you're planting your seeds, the density of the seed is actually what forces the crop to stay small, right? The crop is realizing, I don't have enough nutrients, I don't have enough space for my roots, I don't have enough space for my leaves to get much bigger than this. So even if you forget, sometimes we'll have a tray of pea that someone doesn't, come and buy off of us. It will sit for an extra week or so. It doesn't get that much bigger because this crop is realizing I have to stay small if I want to survive, right? If I need to feed all of my leaves and have enough water, I have to stay small. So on the left side there, this is a pea crop. You can see how many pea seeds are covering that entire tray. In steps 2 and 3, we're actually in what's called our germination phase. So germination is when the seeds start to sprout their first leaves and eventually their cotyledon. So it's more of a yellow color. And that's because this is in our blackout phase. And we'll talk about how you're going to replicate your blackout phase as well. But they have not gone through photosynthesis yet. So sometimes they're going to be a neon yellow color. Sometimes people open it and they think, oh my goodness, I've messed something up. I have a yellow crop that's supposed to be purple. It's totally fine. It just has not gone through photosynthesis yet. So in steps 2 and 3 here, you see that crop is in the blackout phase still. And then in step 4, you see that we have exposed that crop to light. It has turned green and it has started to kind of open up the leaves. When you expose to light, the leaves are going to get a little bigger. The one thing to keep in mind is as soon as you expose to light, there's a little wiggle room in amount of days. So it can be anywhere from 2 to 5 days in blackout. As soon as you expose to light, the crop is not going to get any taller. it's just going to get, the leaves are going to get bigger. So if you're having trouble harvesting, or you want a longer crop because it's easier for you to harvest, or you just enjoy the flavor more when it's longer, you want to leave it in blackout longer, and that will get the crop to be taller. And then as soon as you expose it to light, it's just going to kind of thicken up. The other thing I just wanted to chat about is soil versus hydroponics. So hydroponic is kind of a buzzword where we are growing food without soil. And it's very similar to how the sprouts are grown, but typically it is done in trays like this, or in systems where you have water flowing beneath a crop, whether it's a lettuce, a tomato. You could really grow a lot of different things hydroponically, but you're not using soil. So there are a lot of ways to grow microgreens. We prefer soil, or some sort of a soil-like base. And the reason that we feel that is because microgreens are a very delicate crop. And when roots sit in water for an extended period of time, it opens your crop up to disease, but it also just weakens the crop in general, right? Roots are, so you have to think about the process of nature, right? It's not always wet in the ground. It's not raining every single day on a crop. So we're trying to mimic that here at the farm. There's nothing wrong with growing microgreens hydroponically. And if that's a way that you want to pursue, that is wonderful. Whatever way works for you. We just find that in terms of managing the crop, getting the best flavor, and also just getting the healthiest trays and the highest yields, soil has been the way that we've chosen to grow our crop. Alrighty, so I am going to start going into how we are going to grow our microgreens. And then after that, we're going to pop back into the slides, because I do have a few more slides that are going to talk a little bit about things that you can encounter along your growing journey, some recipes, and then we can do a nice Q&A at the end as well. So if you want to start to gather some of your items that you were given in your kit, you can start to get those in front of you. And while you do that, I am going to show you a few of the things that I have in front of me. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen just so hopefully I will be a little bit bigger. Does that make me bigger for everybody if I stop sharing the screen? A little bit.
Yes.
All right. So yes, great. All right. So I have brought up some of our finished crop that you are going to be growing. So the first one I have here, and again, these are 10-20 trays. So these are trays that are larger than the tray that you are going to grow. They're double the size. But this is a cabbage crop. It's your red acre cabbage. And you can see we actually grew it in a purple tray, but you can see the purple color on the bottom. And you can see that this is a shorter crop. So this is not going to get very tall. It's very, very tiny leaves. But this is ready to harvest, this crop. The other crop that I have with us is our Daikon Radish. So again, this is a much taller crop, but you still have just the true leaves. You can see a couple of the seed heads. You see I have the double trays here as well. And these here are going to be a little bit easier. So the other reason I gave you different varieties is because for me, the way that we harvest here is with a scissor. And it's very easy to come right across this tray and harvest this crop at about halfway here. With the cabbage, sometimes you have to treat it a little more like you're cutting someone's hair. And you're going to hold it here and then cut from the bottom. Okay. And sometimes if it's really hard, I have found that people will just pull up, remove the entire crop from the tray, and then trim the soil off of it. So there's a lot of ways to do it. You can also use a knife and just go right across the tray. We just have some kitchen scissors that we purchased, and we find that is the easiest way for us to harvest. All right. And then the other thing that I brought for us is this tray that I actually is still sitting in blackout today, just to show you what it could look like. This is a cilantro tray. Cilantro gets a little bit stringier on us, so your crop will not be as this long, but it will be this color, right? So this has not been exposed to photosynthesis. Sometimes the seeds stick onto the crop a little bit more because the leaf has not been exposed to light. It hasn't expanded. When the leaves get bigger, the seeds will pop off. So this is a crop that is still in its blackout phase, and it is going through photosynthesis probably tomorrow. Okay, so it's okay to see this yellow color in your crop. Alrighty, so we'll get started with everything that you have. So the first thing that you should have is a bag, a brown bag. This is your soil. So we have pre-measured this soil out for you, so it should fit exactly in your tray. When you want to do this process again, I have some links at the end of the slide, and I'll also be sharing a PDF and this slideshow as well with Joanne to share with all of you, so you will know what kind of soil to buy and where you can get it. But we actually just use a potting mix, and it's a soilless potting mix, which sounds kind of silly, but the soilless potting mix is typically for indoor plants or for seed starting. And the reason that you do that is because soil does have a lot of beneficial microorganisms, but it also has the ability to have microorganisms that are not beneficial to your crop, right? So the soilless mix just means that we have a higher chance of success. Some people also use what's called coco coir, which is the husk of a coconut ground up very finely. This is also a really great product to use with microgreens. Again, we do prefer soil because coco coir does not have any nutrients in it. So as that plant starts to grow and starts to pull nutrients from the soil, it's better to have something that has nutritional value in it. But coco coir is also a really great, inexpensive substrate to use for microgreen growing. So you have your bag of soil, and you should also have 3 trays from us that look something like this. Yours might be colorful, a little more fun than mine. So the first tray I want you to pull out is this bigger one. So you have one tray that's taller than all the others and a little bit flimsier as well. This tray is your doming tray or your blackout tray. So until the very end, we're not going to do anything with this tray. So it's a good idea to just set it aside so that we don't confuse our trays. Then you have 2 trays that look like this. Okay, so these are your 10-10 trays is what they're called, just because they're 10 inches by 10 inches. You have one that has no holes, and you have one that has holes. So always remember, you know, sometimes we mix it up and then you end up leaking a lot of water, but you want to put the no holes is always your bottom tray. It's a tray that's going to go down first. So the first thing we can do is find our tray without holes and put it down on the counter or on the table in front of us. And when you're planting your seeds, you are going to have them in blackout for 4 to 5 days. Typically, you do not need to water them while they are in blackout, but it does depend on the humidity level in your home and if they're getting too much airflow. So it's a good idea to check them because you can always spray them down. But typically, you don't want to water in blackout. So what we do so that we don't have to worry about it when it's in blackout is we add water to the bottom tray just to start, so that we know that there's sufficient water in this tray that the soil can keep pulling just through osmosis. It's going to keep pulling water up in case that tray starts to get dry. So I'm going to aim my camera down for you a little bit. So I have my tray. It's just sitting on the counter. And with a 10-10 tray, you're going to add 1 cup of water. So I usually just use a measuring cup just like this. This is my 1 cup line. If I was doing a 10-20 tray, if any of you ever graduate to a larger tray, you're going to do 2 cups of water. So all I'm going to do is pour the water right into my bottom tray. So you can see that my bottom tray has filled up with water. My desk is a little slanted, so a lot of it's moving in one direction. Another very important point is that putting your microgreens on a shelf that is balanced and level is an important part of this process, just because if you don't, you'll get a varying germination rate across your tray. So the front of your tray may not germinate and grow because there's not as much water, and the back of your tray might be very successful. So if you're seeing that, that usually just means that your tray is not sitting on a balanced surface. All right, so what we've done is we've put our water into our bottom tray. So now we're going to take our tray that has holes and we're going to stick it in the bottom tray. Now with these trays, it's important to look at the way that the lines are running and try to line them up with the bottom tray, because if you don't, it's not going to sit right. You're going to notice that it's not going to push all the way in. So you want it to sit all the way down where the edges are flush. So you shouldn't have any room between the edges, and this is what is going to allow the soil to reach the water. And when you push down on your tray, you'll probably see some water coming up. If you look at my tray right now, as I push it down, there's water popping up through the holes. Okay, so we've bottom watered, we've placed our top tray on with the holes. So our next step is to add our soil. So we are going to add soil from our bag. Again, we've pre-measured this, but when you're adding soil, you want to do at least half the tray. A lot of the crops can grow in less than that, and it depends on the type of crop you're growing, but to be safe and make sure that you don't lose any crop just to being unstable, filling half the tray or more is a good bet. I think I've given you enough soil to do about 3/4 or possibly a full tray. So you're going to dump that soil right into your tray. So what you do want to do is, if you're having any clumps in your soil, it's a good idea to break them up. So like I have a clump like this in my soil. I'm just going to smush it up with my hands. And then what you're going to start to do is start to try to evenly disperse the soil in your tray. If you see any really large sticks, anything like that, you can pull them out. You don't have to. Sometimes what we see is that if we have a tray that has molded, which is honestly quite uncommon with these crops, but if it has molded, typically it's because the mold has attached itself to a stick or something like this that's sitting on the top of the tray. So we're going to try to spread this out evenly. Another good way to spread it out, but sometimes can become messy if you get too excited about it, is to just shake your tray a little bit. And this kind of helps the soil to spread more evenly. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then we're actually going to bring back our blackout tray. And this is the other way that we use this tray. So with germination, a really important step is that you need the soil surface to be as even as possible. If you have a lot of divots and bumps and holes, your seeds aren't going to germinate evenly. And what all that means is that some of your seeds are going to be successful and some of them are not. And you're going to have a lower yield in your tray. Because you're not doing this to sell your crop, it's not the end of the world, but it is a good idea just to try to even up the tray. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your dome tray, your bigger tray here, you're going to place it on the top of your tray like this, and then you're just going to give it a really light push in the middle. You don't want to push too hard, because if the soil is too compacted, nothing will germinate, because the roots of these little seeds won't be able to get to that soil. They won't be able to grab onto anything if it's too hard and compacted. So just a light push at the top. You don't need to save any soil in the bag. If you want, I will be giving links on where you can buy more soil. So if you look closely at my tray, about half of my tray is full. That's just because I didn't do as much soil. But if you have a full tray, that's completely fine. If for some reason you got extra soil and your tray is overflowing with soil, then yes, you can save some in your bag. So right now you can see that my tray looks relatively even with the soil. Do be careful if you pick it up, because the water will spill out if you tilt it, right? So just make sure you hold it level if you're picking it up. But now we have a nice even soil surface. So the next step in our process is that we are going to spray down the surface of the soil to make it wet. So a little hand spritzer is totally fine for this, especially with the smaller tray. So something that you spray your hair with. These are automatic spritzers that you can buy really at any grocery store. You can buy them at Lowe's and Home Depot. You can buy them at Amazon. They come in all different sizes. But the nice thing about this is that all I have to do is pump. And then once I hit this button, it's going to be a continuous spray for me. So what we're trying to do is evenly spray across the tray so that everything is evenly wet. Now, with growing microgreens, underwatering is better than overwatering. The reason for that is you can always add more water. It's really hard to remove water once you've put it there, right? So underwatering is better. I'll give you a close-up look of my tray, kind of see how wet it looks. Right, so all of my soil is moist, but you can tell that I haven't drowned it, right? If you start seeing puddles on the top of your tray, that means that you've put too much water in. And if that happens, that's okay. A good way to just remedy that is to remove some water from the bottom tray, or if you have extra soil, you can add more soil. But You're really just trying to give a nice even watering to the top of the tray. All right. So now your tray is ready to be planted in. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your seeds. In the seed packets that we've provided you, you have the exact amount of seeds for one tray. So in the Daikon packet, if you use that whole packet, it should fit perfectly in this tray. If you're feeling adventurous or like you want some variety, you can also plant half a tray of one variety, half a tray of another. As you start to grow more of this, you might find that you want to do 4 varieties because you like to have a mix in your week. That's totally fine too. You can even mix them all together. But typically, for the sake of this class, and it's your first time growing, I would suggest just picking one variety and going with that. Reminder is that the Daikon radish is going to be a little bit spicy. The spicy salad mix is a very, very mild spice. So if you're not a spicy fan, I would avoid the Daikon for now, but all of them are equally great to grow. And another thing I do want to show you is something that I purchased also just online, Amazon, Lowe's, anywhere is fine, but this is just a shaker, and you can find this, usually it's like a powdered sugar shaker or a seasoning shaker. And we use this just because the way that we grow and how much we're growing a tray, we're planting 40, 50 trays a day. We have to have an exact science. For you guys, you really just need to use your eyes and sprinkle seeds on in a way that you're not overcrowding, but that you're filling the whole tray. Another thing that you can get, though, if you feel like you want to get it right every time, you want to have consistency, is a scale. I'm going to provide to you the weights of every seed type. So you know for your tray, if you want to go online and buy a new variety like kale, you'll know how many ounces of the seeds that you should use for your tray. And where you buy them will also tell you that information, which is really great. So for right now, though, all of your packets are the exact amount of seeds for one tray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it the way that you're going to do it. Normally, if I wanted to, I could have this lid on and I could shake it across the tray. So I'm going to put some seeds right into my hand. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to start sprinkling. You do not have to go fast. So this is just something that you're trying to get the seeds as evenly dispersed across your tray as possible. And I'm using Daikon also because it's a bit easier for you to see. And try your best just to get in the corners. If you end up with some clumps of seeds, it's totally okay. It's not going to ruin the process in any way. Okay, so if you peek at my tray here, I'm going to try and get you a bit of a cleaner view. You can see that I've just sprinkled Daikon seeds across the entire tray. You can see some areas like here where it's a little more concentrated. Again, that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your goal is to just spread them out as much as you can. The final step here before we cover it up is just to give these seeds a spray. So the seeds on the bottom here are touching water, but the top part of the seed has not been wet at all. So just to give it a little bit of a kickstart to let that seed know, hey, it's time to wake up. It's time to start germinating this tray. We're going to give it a spray at the top. And this is going to be a lot lighter of a spray than we did before. You're just misting very quickly. Okay, so we're just trying to add some moisture to the top. The final step here is our blackout tray. So the blackout tray is used in 2 ways. The first way that we're using it is to provide blackout, so darkness, to the tray like this, and also to provide some pressure to the top of the seeds to mimic what it would be like if the seeds were covered with soil. So as you know, typically when you're planting something, you put a seed in the ground and then you cover that seed with soil. You create a dark environment for it. As you can tell here, we are not covering our seeds with soil. They're just sitting on the surface here. And this is how we grow microgreens. There's some varieties you can add soil to the top, but for the most part, you want the seed exposed. So now we have to pretend for the seed that it is in blackout. We have to recreate the environment it would have in nature. So we're doing that with this second tray. So the first thing that we're going to do is the first step of blackout, where you're just placing the tray on top, right side down, and you're putting it right on top of the tray. Now, if you want, and something that we will do sometimes, you can add some weight to it. For you guys, it could be a can of soup, a 5-pound weight that you have at home. It could be anything, but we typically just buy a brick and we'll put it right on the tray. Now, this seems a little intense, especially for a tiny little crop, but the way that you're going to know that your crop is ready to be domed, its second stage of blackout, is it's going to lift up the brick. So the reason that this brick is helpful, more so for someone who's growing to sell than for someone who's just growing to consume at home, is that it creates a hardier crop. It forces the crop to grow stronger, and it evens out the germination because you have even pressure across the entire tray. Okay, so this is just a way to grow a stronger crop. It is 100% not necessary, but if you have a weight that you'd like to add, you can do that. And now this tray is going to sit just like this, 3 trays stacked with the weight on top for 3 to 5 days. Okay, so if you find that you're having an issue where, you know, maybe you have a lower humidity or you feel like your tray is drying out, you can just do a quick peek. So most of the time, if you find that your tray starts to dry out on day 2 or 3, you could decide that you're going to add more water to the bottom tray when you first plant it. And then you don't have to worry over time about going back to spray that tray. But in the beginning, it's going to be a little trial and error just to make sure that your tray stays wet. Again, this is just very important for germination. So what you can do is when you go into the blackout room or even your kitchen counter, wherever you've placed your tray, you're just going to pop this up. Typically, if it needs water, it's going to start drying around the edges of the tray and then towards the middle. So you really don't have to pick the whole tray up. You can just peek. If you see the soil is a lighter color, that means that you should give it a little water. In germination and blackout phase, this is the only time it is okay to water from the top. So if I walked into the room and it was in the germination phase, so it was in blackout, that would be when I can add water from the top. And that is actually the best way to add water. So I'll grab my spray bottle, I'll spritz down any place that I see is dry, and then I'll cover it back up. Other than that, we're always bottom watering our crop, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So the last step in germination is that after 2 to 3 days, maybe 4, depending on crop, this tray is going to start to lift up. You're going to see a little bit of a
lift up with a brick
coming out, and then you're going to do your second phase of blackout, which is this. So all you're doing is you're creating a dome, okay? And what this is going to do is it's going to encourage the crop to grow tall. You can do the dome phase anywhere from 1 to 3 days. And again, that's actually dependent on you. How tall do you want your crop to go? I would not go beyond 3 days though, because then you are going to get what's called a leggy crop, a crop that's kind of flopping over and not really what you want it to look like. So if you see your crop is starting to tilt like this and it's not looking spunky and sprightly, then you want to expose that to light. Okay, so this dome phase is your last stage of blackout. After that time, so possibly 5 to 6 days total in blackout, you're going to remove this. You're going to place your tray. It's going to have yellow plants on it. You're going to place it by the window. Any source of light will do. And then you're going to wait. 2 to 3 days later, you will be able to eat that crop, sometimes even 1 day later. You do want to wait for it to go through photosynthesis because the flavor won't be great if it's yellow or lighter in color. But then from then on, you can use your judgment on when it is good to eat. When it's sitting in the tray, it is fair game. If it looks alive and it looks healthy, it has color, you can eat that for as long as you'd like. Again, just the longer it sits, the flavor is going to decrease and the nutritional value is going to spread out. So you have to eat more to get the same amount of nutrition. Another quick thing that you can do is you can add a light. So this is a light that we bought for $25 on Amazon. It can clip onto a table. and then it can bend right over your crop. So it has a timer on it. Typically, you don't need this to be in light for more than 12 hours a day, okay? Will it grow again after harvest? Great question. It can grow again after harvest. Every time that happens, though, less flavor, less nutritional value. For us, we never
to always have them look at the chat. Just
always,
right? I mean, like,
sorry, we just have so many.
It's just so much easier, right?
Joanne, I don't know if you can find who has to mute. So after harvest, typically I just dispose of that tray. Okay, so we are going to pop back into our slides quickly, and then we have a little bit of time for Q&A as well.
There's 2 questions that
Okay, can everyone see my screen again? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All righty. So we went through the steps of planting, and again, I'm going to give this to you so you don't have to worry about taking too many notes. And what I want to show you now is just some quick tips and tricks. So the first thing here that I'm showing you is watering. So again, the only time it's okay to water from the top and mist is when you're in blackout. And that's only if your crop is looking dry. Other than that, you don't have to worry about it. Once you've exposed the crop to light, you are only bottom watering. You don't want to miss that crop because it will open it up to get something like mold or other issues that you can encounter. The other thing in this video here that I'm showing you is what looks kind of like mold. So in the beginning of growing, a lot of people will be like, oh my goodness, I've messed up. I've grown mold at the bottom. And this is actually what's called a root hair. And sometimes on crops like cabbage, it looks like it's taken up your entire tray because again, you're not giving this plant a lot of soil and you've planted the seed on the top of the soil. So what that means is you're going to have root exposure. So a really good way to tell if you're looking at mold or a root hair is to do what I've done here. Let me just rewind it. When you spray it, the root hair is going to disappear. It's going to absorb the water and it's going to be gone. If you spray mold, you're just going to have water sitting on mold, right? So a really great way to test it is just to give it a spritz, and then you know for sure that it is a root hair. This picture here is showing you what your roots could look like on the bottom. So in between the top and the bottom tray, the roots are going to start to shoot out. On your smaller crops like cabbage, you may not see them this significantly, but this is a good thing. If you see roots coming out of the tray, they're reaching for your water. This is a healthy crop. If you see your roots start to turn mushy, yellow, or brown, that means you're overwatering. So after you've exposed it to light, you're going to add a 1/2 cup to 1 cup of water a day, and that's it. You're just going to pick up the top tray, you're going to pour it into your bottom tray. And I would say typically I would start with 1 cup. And then if you find that it's not really drinking all that water, you can lower it from there. Again, with blackout, this is just some pictures of some more of that yellow crop I was telling you. This is wheatgrass here, cilantro, this is broccoli. You can even see that this tray of broccoli wasn't perfectly blacked out. On the bottom side here, there's a little bit of green. So some of this is starting to photosynthesize. And if that happens to you, again, especially growing in a home, totally fine if you can't find a place that's perfect blackout. Harvesting. So this is just a quick video of me harvesting a couple trays just to show you the size. So you don't want to get too close to the root. And again, we're just using scissors to harvest. On the bottom here, this is what's called a root mat. So when you are harvesting from your trays, your roots are going to, again, you have so many crops in a small space, the roots are going to take over the bottom of that tray. If you have a compost, this is the best place for your finished tray. If you have a yard, you can break it up with your hands, dump it in the woods. But if you can compost it, you can use that in your garden. If you're planting some plants, it's perfect for that. Please don't throw it out if you can help it. Just because it is just soil, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just roots that you're seeing on the bottom. All right, so this is just some of the crops, and again, I'll provide this to you. You can put it in a worm bin. Worms will eat right through the root mats, and that's actually how we take care of our root mats. So worm bins are a perfect place to put your finished product. They may not eat the seeds, so just be aware that if you have seeds sitting on the top, that's just because the worms don't prefer that. Some of the seed varieties that I have not given you need to be soaked before you plant them. So I'm just showing you pea and cilantro here. Sunflower is another one. The reason for that, they have a lot harder of a shell on the outside of their seed. So if you just plant it right in the tray, it's going to take a very, very long time to germinate. So you need to wait and soak it first. And then once you've soaked it, then it's going to be ready to plant. And it has a different variety of hours for that. So 8 to 12, 4 to 6. But certain ones you do want to make sure that you soak, and it is an important step. So this last few slides is just ways that we like to enjoy our microgreens. So the reason that we chose to grow microgreens is actually more mission driven. We are trying to solve for food inequity in our system, right? So we're actually trying to find ways to get nutritionally valuable and dense food to people who don't have access to it. So for example, if I'm a family of 6, I'm on a budget today, all I can afford is pizza or macaroni and cheese. I can add a very small share of microgreens to that dish and increase the nutritional value of that dish for my family. So that is where we use microgreens, but it's also a really great practice for your everyday life. We put microgreens on everything. This morning I had it on my bagel with cream cheese. This is microgreens on mac and cheese, microgreens on eggs with some bread. This is a sweet treat, which is sunflower microgreens with honey and ricotta cheese on crackers. You can replace the sunflower micros with anything. It's really great. Smoothies is perfect. If you have microgreens that have gone bad, you can freeze them. But just keep in mind, it is like freezing lettuce. You are losing some nutritional value when you do that. But popping microgreens into a smoothie is a really great way to use them. We actually dehydrate our excess microgreens here in our dehydrator, and we blend them into a powder. It makes them shelf stable, and then we add that powder to smoothies or soups. It's really good. Sushi, any sort of meat, fish, pasta, burgers, tacos, it goes on everything. A lot of people ask about sweet ways to enjoy it. That we haven't explored too much besides that honey. Some people will dip sunflower micros and pea micros in chocolate shells, which is nice. And then we will make microgreen pesto. You can make microgreen pea soup. So again, you're just replacing what you would normally have in that dish, but you're increasing nutritional value significantly. The thing to keep in mind is micros don't do well with heat. So when you're adding microgreens to a meal, you're adding it always as a garnish. You're not sauteing it in your pan. That also loses nutritional value as you saute it. It's not going to be tasty sauteed, right? So you're adding it to your meal at the very end. You'll see at high-end restaurants are adding it more so for the beauty of it, for like a garnish. But we really load it on. We kind of just add handfuls of to whatever we're eating, and that's totally fine to do as well. This is some places where we get seeds and soil. Again, I will provide this to you. And the trays that you have are from Bootstrap Farmer if you find that you want to buy some more trays. And again, we use ProMix. You don't have to use ProMix. I do suggest organic if you can. But soilless potting mix is what you want to go for. So you don't want to get garden soil. You don't want to get soil. You want to get a soilless potting mix, typically for indoor plants. Alrighty, so that is all I have for you today. I do have a few minutes for questions. I was hoping to have more, so I apologize for that. But we'll see if we can get to some questions now. I'm just going to pop into the chat. All right, so can you reuse the soil? So you can reuse the soil if you've composted it. So if it's gone through your worm bin, you can reuse it, but keep in mind that you want to mix that with a soil. You don't want to just use worm bin soil because it has very high nutritional value. You have to dilute it essentially. If you put it just in an outdoor compost bin or you have it sitting outside and it breaks down, just keep in mind, it might still have seeds in it. So if you reuse it, that's great, but you might just pop up some things from your previous tray. Like if you're growing broccoli and you were growing daikon before, you might get a couple daikons in your broccoli. So just keep that in mind. It does take about 2 to 3 months to break down in summer weather. In winter, it's going to take you a long time to break down that soil. Bottom heat. So you can provide a heat mat if you would like. A lot of gardeners will do that when they're starting crops. You don't need to do it though, because you are giving such a shallow amount of soil. And as long as you're growing in like some sort of a livable room temperature, I would say above 55 degrees, you don't need a heat mat. So in your unheated garage, I would add a heat mat. And you can add some light. So the grow light that I showed you is perfect. You can also buy what's called a T5 light anywhere on Amazon. And you can just use some zip ties to string that up and put it on a timer. Again, you want about 12 to 15 hours of light per day, and the rest will be darkness. I will send you the slides in an email. So blackout initially can be anywhere from 3 to 4 days. It can be a little bit longer, especially if your seeds are sticking to the crop. But the best way to tell is that your tray will start to lift up a little bit. Even with the weight on it, it will lift. And that's when it's time to flip that into a blackout dome. The dome stage can be anywhere from 1 day to 2 days. So total, you're looking at anywhere from 4 to 6 days in blackout. I wouldn't steam microgreens. Not a great way to eat them. Again, they just get very soggy. The brick you leave on only while it's in the phase where the tray is sitting like this. Once you dome it like this, you don't want to put the brick on, but while the tray is sitting like this, you can leave that brick on as long as you'd like. Let's see. Source of water. So rainwater is really great. The only thing you have to be aware of with rainwater, especially if you're pulling it from your gutter, is that in your garden, it's great because you're waiting about 60 or 40 days before you eat that crop. Because you're eating microgreens so quickly directly from the soil, I'm always a little more cautious with water because you're grabbing whatever's in your gutters in that water, whether it's feces, just dirt, anything that is on your roof can be in that water. So I would stick with tap water is my suggestion. You can get your water tested and then try your rainwater. And we also use rested tap. So all of our tap has chlorine in it. A really great way to remove the chlorine is to have your water just sit for 24 hours. We just have it sit in old jugs, and we have a bunch of jugs that we line up. And after 24 hours, all of the chlorine will have evaporated for that. So at least you have generally clean water. If you want to do great water, you can use filtered water, which would be ideal for your crop. So once you harvest your microgreens, you want to store them in the fridge. It's best in a closed container. So a mason jar, a Tupperware. If you leave them open to the air, they're going to get soggy very quickly. So closed container with a tight lid. Vegetable or fruit drawer is best, but you can put them right in the main section of your fridge. Our microgreens here, we can store anywhere from 8 to 15 days. I've eaten microgreens that are a month old, but I don't know if, I wouldn't always suggest that, but use your best judgment as with any food waste. When your microgreens have gone bad, you can again put them in compost if that's available to you. In Darien, you have a really wonderful compost program. I believe it's free to participate in. You can drop your compost off at the local recycling center in the dump. You just need a pass. So if you feel like you want to get involved in that, I'm sure that we can share some info on that. For the heat mat, I would say it doesn't have to be very hot. A lot of the heat mats that you'll find are just plug in and you don't even have to set the temperature. I would suggest one of those very simple ones that you just put the plug in. If you're finding that you're not getting germination, that means it's too cold. So if the plants are not taking, you're not seeing the little babies start to come out, it's too cold, and then you'll increase the heat. But I would say it's better to start lower than overheat it. Any light is fine. Direct sunlight for all things is always better. So if you can put it in a window, it doesn't have to be a perfect window. You'll see that the crops will lean towards the light, but as long as they're all able to reach the light and you're seeing photosynthesis happen, so it's turning green or purple, the color it should be, that's enough light. So it doesn't have to be direct. In the summer months, you're welcome to pop your tray out on your deck and get it some nice natural light. In our space, we use all artificial lighting. So artificial lighting is okay, and you can buy any type of artificial lighting that you would like. T5 or LED lights are ideal, and you'll also want some of the blue and red spectrum lights that you'll see come with most of the grow lights that you order. Buying seeds, we buy our seeds from True Leaf Market and Johnny Seeds. Both of those will allow you to buy seeds in smaller quantities, and they'll also tell you how much you need. Typically, when they give you that number, it's for a 10-20 tray. So remember, you have a 10-10 tray, so you want to know, you want half of that amount. So keep that in mind when you're buying seeds, because you can buy them in very big bulk. We do sell our greens to the public. So right now we are in La Roca's Market. We also have a farm share program where you can come to the farm and pick up your weekly share on Thursdays. That did sell out for the winter share, but our next share will launch March. So you can keep an eye out for that and you can sign up. With the shares, you're getting microgreens and mushrooms, as well as some of our dehydrated products. On Fridays, you can do a farm pickup. So the reason we do that is sometimes our restaurants cancel, they need less, we've grown too much crops. So on a Monday or Tuesday, you can email us, call us, or message us on Instagram. Let us know that you'd like to place an order. And then on Friday, you're welcome to come and pick up that order at the farm weekly, as long as you just let us know on Mondays. We have a couple customers that do a weekly pickup and they tell us what they want every Friday. So if you say, I love daikon and spicy salad, or I love your micro mix and I want 4 ounces every Friday, we can do that for you. We grow to order. And then you would come every Friday to pick it up at the farm. We don't do deliveries. We do teach in school. So Casey and I, our backgrounds, we are educators at schools. And actually that is what we are looking to do with this business. We're looking to educate school groups, homeschool groups, as well as scout groups, along with our adults. So if you have a school or you would be interested in us coming to teach either virtually or in person, we would be happy to do that. And you can reach out to us either by email or you can give us a call. Cleaning the trays. So the best way to clean the trays is to give them a rinse in the sink. You can scrub them with a brush to get soil or roots out of the little holes. If you're using soap, it should be biodegradable soap, like a Myers soap. You don't have to use soap. We don't use soap on our trays. What we do is we wipe the trays down with isopropyl when we're done. But if you're not wiping down with isopropyl, a little bit of biodegradable soap would be best. Alrighty, I think I got through all of the questions.
Lindsey, this has been great.
Thank you
so much. So informative, really wonderful. And it was really great to sort of learn about where your food comes from, because that's part of this whole thing too. So that's been wonderful. And everyone, if you are at whatever stage you want to take pictures and send them along, please do. We would love to see how this project works for everyone. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending. And thank you, Lindsey, for teaching us everything. It was wonderful. And I hope you guys all learned a lot and enjoyed making your microgreen kit. And thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you.